Good morning. I'd like to call together the meeting of the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority for March 28, 2013. Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Ms. Carano. Mr. Kerrigan. Here. Ms. Cooney. Here. Mr. Curtis. Here. Mr. Dortch. Here. Mr. Finland. Here. Mr. Flynn. Here. Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Hawkins. Here. Mr. Humke. Mr. Sullivan. Ms. Weber. Ms. Zadra.
Mr. Kerrigan, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to ask for the approval of the agenda, but I would like the board to consider granting the chair a little discretion at some point in the meeting. There are a couple of people that will need to leave by 10:30, and there are some action items we'd like to make sure we get to before 10:30. So I'll ask for approval of the agenda as provided to you with the caveat that at some point we may need to move some items up during the course of the meeting. Okay. I have a motion for approval from Councilwoman Zadra. Do I have a second? Or maybe I had a motion and had a second. Sure. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. Public comments? Do you have any indication of public comment? Maybe we should have some comment from our two board members that are sort of constrained over here. Is there a reason for that?
Everybody got a memo. Almost where it's
Okay. Item 5, review and approval of minutes, February 28, 2013, Board of Directors.
Move to approve.
I have a motion from Ms. Cooney. I have a second. Second, thank you. Discussion, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Updates and reports. The President's report, Mr. Baum.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I will be brief today because I know we have a lot to cover. As noted in my President's report, we recently had a visit by ESPN here as part of a potential bid for a hybrid X game starting in February of 2015. This originated down at the lake, and our friends at the lake contacted us when ESPN indicated their interest in expanding the traditional Winter X Games format to include a hybrid that has some of the popular games from the summer games as well as the traditional winter games. The cities of Los Angeles and Aspen have traditionally hosted the Summer and Winter X Games. They've been wildly successful, but now they're at a point where ESPN is reconsidering their venues and have really decided not to continue in Los Angeles and not to continue in Aspen. So we started as a winter bid. It's now gone into this hybrid mode. Joe Kelly and I toured them around the city of Reno and Sparks and showed them all the major facilities and options available to them. They liked what they saw. They also went to Heavenly and Squaw, although at Squaw it looks like Alpine Meadows would actually be the venue for that portion. So the concept would be to have in February of 2015 the start of a multi-year commitment coming to this region and having the traditional snowboarding, snowmobile type competitions at the lake in 2 different venues, and then simultaneously have in the Reno area their motocross, their skateboarding, their rally car events. And they liked very much the Reno Event Center downtown. They were very excited at the prospect of having the motocross event take place on the streets of Reno. And if you can imagine these cars going 100 miles an hour under the Reno Arch and skidding around the corners, it could be a pretty exciting, not only event, but way to promote our destination. I was on a conference call yesterday with all the key players. We have 2 proposals from companies to help us with our bid with ESPN. It's quite a pricey prospect is $10,000 to $20,000 a month for these companies. So we've decided to have sit-down face-to-face meetings with them as soon as possible. We have until June to send a proposal, and we need to figure out, if in fact we're going to proceed and how we might allocate costs. So no specific numbers to report to you now, but we are taking a careful look at this. There's no question it's an outstanding marketing opportunity for the region. We just want to make sure that all the players are willing to step up financially, and we can coordinate the effort to make it a big success. So pretty exciting, and if you can imagine a time when we would have ESPN in for the X Games and Fox Sports 1 in for Barrett-Jackson, we would have 40-plus hours of live TV coverage coming from Reno Tahoe in 1 year, every year. And that would do amazing things for the awareness of this destination. A couple other things. I noted we won a number of awards in the Addy Award competition. Stan Can Design made all the entries of the creative he did with us, and it's just great to note that we got Best of Show broadcast for our radio campaign, 2 gold Addies, 4 silver Addies for our new sales video, and also our billboards and our overall campaign. But as I've noted before, the most important thing is that it drove people to our website in unprecedented numbers, 47% bump year over year from Northern California last summertime. So it's cool when the creative community says it's good work, but it's especially good when it drives business. Julie Greer has started as our new national sales manager in Southern California, an outstanding hire from the Hyatt Corporation. As Director Finland has noted, he heard from his friends at Hyatt that she was a big loss for their company, but she's a terrific gain for us. And this is a good example of how our reputation in the industry has improved recently in the last year. Because of our marketing campaigns, because of our higher profile at trade shows, that we can attract high-quality talent like this. In the past, if John didn't know someone, it was kind of tough to talk them into coming to Reno Tahoe because we had such a low profile. Today, we have strangers who are applying for the jobs here because they see good things happening here and want to be involved with it. And I think that bodes well for the future. In addition, since I sent out my President's Report 2 weeks ago, we are delighted to tell you that Jennifer Bumbelow has joined us as our new National Sales Manager in Washington, D.C. She has over 20 years' experience there, and she is leaving the San Diego Convention and Visitors Bureau to join the RSCVA. Once again, here's a person with a very high-profile job for a very high-profile destination, and she's moving her career and her future over to Reno Tahoe, USA. She's extremely excited about it. We're very impressed with her. She's got a proven track record, and both of these ladies are big producers who are old school to the extent that they have customers who are their personal friends, and they can go to those customers and say, I've got a new gig. What business can you give me? That's the kind of person we're looking for, somebody who has those kind of relationships and isn't going to take a year to start producing for us. So we're extremely excited to have those 2 ladies on board. The other thing that I think is worthy of noting here as sort of an extension of what the notes were that I sent out to you a few weeks ago is that we have now turned a corner in terms of sales production as well. We have 40,000 definite room nights that we are turning with contracts right now for the months of March and April. Our goals for those months are 19,000 per month. We've actually exceeded those goals, and 75% of it is not sports. So I know in the past people have said, well, sports has been kind of carrying the load, and it's true. We've had a lot of great sports bookings, and Shelley Fine continues to be a big producer, but 75% of this is associations and national organizations booked by the rest of the sales team. And we're talking about some biggies too. I don't know what this means, but the No Dinks Power League, there's 4,120 room nights. Here's the International Doctors and Alcoholics Anonymous, 2,200 room nights. California Narcotic Officers Association, 5,918 room nights. That's a big one. We've got a lot of terrific business. We did get another 9,000 room nights from volleyball, a terrific win, and that was done with the cooperation of the RTC, who stepped up and allowed us to put together a structure of public bus service to get 2,000 athletes from their hotels to the convention center in a very short period. And you do the math, 50 or 60 people on a bus, 2,000 people in an hour, that's a lot of movement. But the RTC stepped up and made that happen, and the group bought it. And I think that's a terrific show of regional cooperation that allowed us to get a terrific piece of business for this destination. So pretty exciting stuff to have that kind of production. And now you add into the mix these 2 new national sales managers, one of whom has already started working, has had her 2-week orientation, the other of which starts working in about 10 days from now. And things are starting to really percolate in the sales department. And we've got a lot of great business for the convention center this year. I won't go through it all, but obviously the women's bowling setup is quite impressive. When we have our retreat on Monday, we'd like to offer at one of the breaks the opportunity to give you a little of a tour of the $1 million plus temporary facility that's been built in Hall 5 of the convention center. Pretty impressive to know we have 88 bowling lanes downtown, and we've added another 44 at the convention center to accommodate the 100,000 plus room nights of bowling business this year. So things are looking up, and that is my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baum. Any questions, comments? Thank you. Under your item for updates and reports, we're to hear from the Sierra Ski Marketing Council and Ski Lake Tahoe presentation. Mr. Roboto.
I'd like to introduce Carl Roboto, who is the Executive Director of Sierra Ski Marketing Council and Ski Lake Tahoe, and he's going to give us an update on the 2 organizations and specifically speak to the importance and significance of winter sports and economic impact for the entire region. Carl?
Thank you, Jennifer. Give me 1 second, everybody. Oh, wrong one. My new glasses. Pulled the wrong one up. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Jennifer, and it's a real pleasure to be here, everybody. I've worked with many of you and sat in many meetings with you. I just have never seen you all together at one time. So it's a pleasure to be here. As Jennifer mentioned, I'm here to talk a little bit about regional winter sports, and it's important to the region. And it's important for a variety of reasons, the first of which is the actual visitor demand it creates during the winter season, the advertising and positioning of the region as an outdoor destination that's active, the support and help it provides with RTIA and generating air service for the region. And I think it helps immensely, as Chris indicated, with things like the X Games. We don't get people talking to us about the X Games unless we can convince them that we are a key player in the winter sports marketing, as well as being able to offer the combination of goods that we can. So it's very critical to the organization, or to the region. I want to take you through real quickly a bunch of research we've done just to show you how important, and then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We really function as 2 different organizations. There's a Ski Lake Tahoe organization, which is the private sector ski resorts. The major ones, Alpine, Heavenly, Kirkwood, North Star, Mount Rose, Sierra Tahoe, Squaw Valley, and we've got some new additions coming in that will make some announcements in the near future. We have a sister organization that is the Sierra Ski Marketing Council that includes the Lake Tahoe Visitor Authority, the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, in combination with Incline, Reno Sparks Convention and Visitor Authority, the Nevada Commission on Tourism, and Reno Tahoe International Airport. This is probably one of the most complicated and successful cooperative groups in the history of the region. It really has done an amazing job in terms of that. The overall goal is we want to increase paid skier days over the next 3 years. We focus on Southern California in the short term, but really we look nationally. There's just some opportunistic things in Southern California with changes in the market that we want to take advantage of. Our objectives is to effectively position the destination, to increase lift ticket sales, but also to create a positive economic impact throughout the region. And you'll see that, what that economic impact is in a little bit. And then to work with selected partners on cooperative programs, meaning all of the players that you see, as well as some outside organizations. Last year, the ski resorts undertook a national survey throughout the United States. We looked at a variety of different destinations, or markets, including LA, San Diego, Dallas, Chicago, New York, Boston, Minneapolis, Houston, and those should look familiar because we try and follow the air markets in terms of where we're drawing people, and we wanted to get their perception of us. And this was really fascinating and I think rewarding. While Colorado is a clear market leader and always has been, we have begun to emerge as a number 2 in terms of the national picture. For years, we were in sort of 3rd and 4th place, and I think after years and years of constant effort, the market is beginning to see us in a very favorable light. When we look at where we are, again, Colorado's a market leader. In terms of visitation, the Northeast gets a lot because they pull a lot of regional stuff out of the Northeastern corridor. And our goal over the next few years is to close what we call the Colorado gap. Is we have to close that Colorado gap, and that's where a lot of the efforts that we will be embarking on are designed to do. When you look at the destination that people would consider, again, you can see us close that Colorado gap, but there is still a pretty good gap, and you'll see it even more here in a minute. When we ask why Lake Tahoe is your top 10, snow quality, scenery, weather, lodging quality, overall value, friendliness, and so forth. But we also asked, what are the bottom 5? And there's some challenges there that we have. Obviously, ease of transportation to the airport and resorts is something, and the resorts are looking at that. Accessibility and availability of access by number of flights, that's key. It's key to everybody, whether you're the RSCVA, whether you're a ski resort, whether you're an individual business. That is a key piece of our strategic future. And the ski resorts have been active members of the RMC for years and support it financially and any other way we can. Overall destination infrastructure is something that we have to begin to look at. And I think as we come out of the recession and we see more and more infrastructure investment both in Reno and in Lake Tahoe, I think that will bode well. Destination rating experience. Here's the resorts. We just had a big meeting on this issue yesterday. There are some clear issues that we are superior on that we're not getting credit for in the market. For example, a scenery. We should have a much higher score than Colorado. And après-ski and nightlife. And so we are going to be reevaluating and readjusting some of our communications, photography, and so forth. Not that we don't do well, we do, but we should be killing a few of these areas. So we will look to continually evolve the program. In terms of programs, we have a variety of them. Our target market is 25 to 54, $100,000 income, families, singles, couples with no kids. Air access markets are key. We follow air. And again, in the short term, the Southern California markets of key importance, particularly because of some of the disarray in Mammoth, and we want to take advantage of that. The bankruptcy down there, the challenges they've had, we believe that's opportunistic to our region. And so in the short term, we focus some additional efforts in that market. Not that we don't pay attention to the rest of the country, but there's opportunistic moment down there. Our competitive set is Colorado, particularly the Front Range, Utah, Canada, most specifically Whistler, and then in the Southern California market, Mammoth is a prime competitor. The current activities that the two organizations engage in are a wide variety of activities. Website, airline co-op, public relations, research, promotions, domestic marketing activities. And Ski Lake Tahoe has a whole additional program in the UK and to a limited extent Australia to bring international visitors to this region. Promotional elements are the ski resorts, the area, lodging, dining, and shopping. These are all the key elements that round out the vacation experience and add value for the visitor, including what's available in Lake Tahoe, Reno, and maybe some of the other areas that people visit. Recreation and entertainment is absolutely a key part of the message and the sub-messages that we talk to. And then access is absolutely critical. We talk about access all the time, how you can get from where you are to here. And so these are all the elements that we frequently mention. Here's just a quick picture of the website. You can take a look at it. There's plenty of, if you scroll down, there's information on Reno and Tahoe and everywhere, so everyone gets covered. Here's another version of it. And we try and promote what we call in-the-moment photography to make you feel like you are there in the moment, experiencing it, and to draw people into that site. This site has been incredibly successful since we revamped it 2 years ago and has probably exceeded our expectations by a wide margin. Here's some sample outdoor ads. These were stuck right down in the core of LA. online ads, we've got them all. We do a number of promotions. We did some promotions with Reno on the radio, and so we have, as you can see, a whole variety of marketing activities that we engage in. There's some print. This year we did, or this past year, this was coming off the weak winter year of last year. We did a survey to assess the viability and the impact of our marketing efforts. What we found was 83% of the people we surveyed were non-Californians, which is good, which is what we want. We want destination skiers and boarders to come here. We want them coming through the Reno airport. We want them staying throughout the region. We want them spending 3, 4, 5 nights and sampling the whole thing. And so this was very rewarding for us. The average party size was 3.2. 26% travel with children. So the majority, a vast majority, don't travel with children, which sort of fits, a broader profile of the region. And the average number of kids on a trip was under 18 was 2.6. Income, as you can see, is very positive. Much above the $100,000 a year mark, which is what we're after, and we'll continue to push to attract those kinds of travelers and visitors. The economic impact of the overall program is roughly $380 million throughout the region. Roughly $277 in direct economic impact, $43 million in indirect economic impact, $61 million in induced economic impact, roughly 3,500 jobs created, and a boatload of taxes that probably don't stay anywhere local, that flow through the state. In terms of our efficiency and return on investment, we have our cost per visitor down, cost per unique visitor to the website down to $2.28. At the end of the day, we're generating $293 for every dollar we invest. So it's a very positive return on investment for the partners. And again, I think it's important to understand is the leverage that all these participating groups get. You put in a little money and it leverages up almost to $1 million in marketing efforts. And the other thing too is these members are integrated and involved. The RSCVA is there when we need their help. Jennifer, the web, Rick from on the interactive side have been integral partners in helping shape and design programs and whatnot, as well as everyone else has. So it's a true partnership. I think it's a great example of what cooperative marketing can do. And I think as we work harder and harder to close that Colorado gap, I think things like the X game and more capital investment that is going to happen down here as well as the lake, I think we have a good chance to close that gap even further. I'll take any questions you have. I want to thank you again for the time.
Any questions for Mr. Roboto?
Hey, Carl. Nice to see you here. I noticed international, that's been a big focus over the last several years. I'm wondering what international percentage of international business makes up what comes to
it's probably in the
ski.
5 to 10% range, but it's primarily UK. Especially in the winter, and those are driven off of long-standing programs that the ski industry's had in the UK. Ski Lake Tahoe is one of the core sponsors to the Warren Miller ski film program throughout the UK, and we work with a group called Black Diamond and have been working with them for a number of years. It's one of those things that you got to stay with it. It's a long-term play, and you've got to stay with it. And we now see a fairly consistent level of business from the international markets. Plus, increased air access into California is good too. So,
Thank you. Mr. Curtis?
Just a couple of comments. I'm a skier. Been skiing in Colorado.
I know. I heard you. I heard your comments.
Colorado, experience.
I heard your comments.
But just a thought. I've done a lot of skiing in Europe as well, and I've seen a lot of European skiers over here who are commenting on the disorder of European ski resorts. And I don't know if you ski there or not, but you basically have 2 posts, and you have to work your way through posts. It's a real mess. And there's a lot of European skiers that are, in fact, wanting to come to the United States. So I applaud that effort, number one. Number two, I'm curious as to, I went to Colorado because of the Epic Ski Pass program that North Star has, which is a pretty good deal. I mean, I was there, I was spending money, and they have the same thing, I guess, a reciprocity coming out here, at Heavenly and Kirkwood, and I see that Alpine and Squaw Valley are doing the same things. I'm wondering, are you involved in that, and if so, how much? And then I have one more comment, and then I'll let you go.
No, very, very, very little because of antitrust issues. We are not allowed to engage in any of the lift ticket assemblies, and Vail Resorts and KSL Capital have, significant lift ticket programs that they engage in. Now, there is a thing called the Ski Lake Tahoe International Ticket, which is put together by the resorts, and it is designed for international use to hedge against to provide wholesalers, but to hedge against individuals creating their own interchangeables. And so we do have an interchangeable ticket that's managed outside of our office, but it is a product that's out there for international wholesalers and is available to them.
And one last comment, and that is, I think this is an outstanding cooperative effort. I mean, it's a focus on the region that I think is very important to all of us. And so I applaud your efforts and appreciate it, and thank the RSCVA for its involvement with your organization.
They've been long-standing partners. I mean, they've been fabulous to work with, and really enjoy having them at the meetings and getting their contributions. So
It's important to note that Carl is also the current chair of the Regional Marketing Committee, and we are
not for long.
and I will be taking his role over as of July 1st as the new chair. So we've got a great partnership there. So we interact in a lot of different places, all in support of this overall region, and it does cross state lines. There's a lot of California involvement along with the Nevada side, but the important thing is look at it from the customer's perspective and realize that they see this as one region. They don't really think about when they're moving over a city line, a county line, or a state line. They're just here to have fun and enjoy themselves and get great value. So we look forward to continuing our strong.
And to that point, you don't get the X Games unless you work together, unless you have those relationships. You don't even get approached unless you have those relationships and you have that support and those kinds of partnerships. So I think that speaks very highly to the long-standing relationship all these partners have had with each other, and so I think it's very good. So,
Ms. Sadra?
Mr. Chair, I'll try. Carl, good to see you.
hey,
25 years ago, we worked together up at
Yes.
the lake. The 22% of the concerns about the air service, the airport is a major partner in this activity. Can you talk a little bit about what their involvement brings, and specifically, not just like the percentage of the budget that they bring to the table, but the added seats that they attempt to bring in during the ski season, and what that takes to get those seats and how they grow.
That's a great question. I think the airport, it has to be an integral partner in anything destination, and they have been. They recognized a long time ago the value of these destination skiers and boarders coming through. And what really the airport has been great with is access to these air carriers, which you wouldn't get. I mean, who knows what door to knock on at Southwest or United or what have you, And so the airport has been, not only financially supportive of the overall effort, they have been incredibly supportive of in terms of access and helping to provide or help shape programs and ideas. The effort works really well because a lot of times carriers want to start in the winter. They see ski as this sort of magic worm on the hook for them, and so I think the partnership is absolutely essential, as well as the intelligence information the airport provides. They've got a lot of research. The airport economics analysis has been very good and very helpful to a lot of the strategies that we look at, and so that relationship is of paramount importance, and I think it's a key piece of what we're all doing.
Do you actually have a number of how many added seats we get during ski season time?
I don't, but I know, as you suggest, Sharon, we get additional flights out of a number of different markets specifically for, I don't have that number off the top of my head, and as a chair, I feel a little remiss. I should, but I'm fading in memory. But we do get additional flights from a number of different markets because of winter and the airport's active engagement in helping to get those flights. But I don't have the number off the top of my head.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for the
Again, I want to
presentation.
thank you all. Appreciate it.
The next item is the consent items, and we have items from the Marketing Committee. I would ask if you are interested in covering those as consent with a motion and a vote, or would you like a presentation?
Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, and I know we've got some other items that we've got to address here that are going to probably take a little bit of time, and I know we're going to lose a few of us early. I would suggest that we take the consent items and items G through K and item M and just go straight to questions. What's that?
Is that in the form of a motion?
M, yes.
I don't know if there's a
Yeah.
second.
I think we're going to need a presentation on L, I would assume. But I think we can take M.
Okay.
So that would be my motion if there's any.
So we would handle the consent items C through F and items G through K and item M as a single motion.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Dortch, second by Ms.
Any
Cooney.
discussion?
Ms. Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was asked by the chairman to ask about possible consideration of a continuing of item number C to our next meeting. I think there was some discussion that, and I'll just be quite frank, that I guess the CEOs were supposed to be involved with possibly the strategic planning. And I'm sorry I wasn't at the strategic planning meeting, but the chairman asked if this could be continued because I guess the CEOs are going to be meeting on Monday. And he wanted to make sure that the CEOs had input into the strategic plan.
Will you consider modifying your
Yeah,
motion?
unless there's an issue with it, I don't have a problem pulling that and letting it and bringing it back next month.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the second?
Well, they're meeting on Monday, is what it sounds like.
No, there's the retreats on Monday.
Well, we can't.
It's too late.
Yeah, it's too late to modify that agenda, I would think. We can just put it on next month.
Is it a problem?
I don't have a problem.
I'm hoping that we would
Okay.
consider that.
Yeah, is that okay with you? Okay with the second?
Okay.
I just thought.
Okay, so we'll be considering items D through F, G through K, and item M. Any questions, discussion? Calling the question on the motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you,
And then
that
do
passes.
And do you want a motion to continue item C till next month's agenda?
Yes, sir, please.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I have a motion, a second, to continue item C to the next monthly meeting. Any discussion? On the motion, please signify by saying aye if you support this motion.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Passes unanimously. So we'll move to item L, review, discussion, and action on the potential lease options for the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority main office. Mr. Rivers?
Actually, I'm going to handle this, Mr. Vice Chairman. We've been located at this current address at 4001 South Virginia Street under a 10-year lease, and it expires this October 31st. And during the time we've been located here, our staffing levels have changed and our needs have changed. We're currently occupying 35,545 square feet, including a sublease at a monthly cost of $21,508, which is $28,920 gross, less a sublease of $7,412. Through an extensive review of office space in the Reno Sparks area, we narrowed down to several options and went out as a group, executive team, looking at the options and came up with one other alternative at 5190 Neal Road, might be known as the Wells Fargo building over by Meadowood Mall, that we felt had some merit. It's the top half of the floor, half of the top floor of that building. It's the same building that Edon is in, if some of you have been to their offices. And we took some serious look at that. We also talked to our current landlord about the possibility of reconfiguring the space here. I had some concerns about relocating the office in the fall months. It's always not only an expense, but a bit of a disruption in a very key time of year for our sales team and other employees. The space that was at Neal Road was almost 9,000 square feet, but frankly, we were trying to really shoehorn our staff into that space. And ultimately, it looked like that was going to be a little bit too tight to start without any really growth potential. As the economy improves, as we may want to add staff members, there really would be no room to do so in the space that was available in that building. Our landlord came back with a very aggressive proposal here for 4001 South Virginia Street. It would cut us down to 15,126 square feet. It would move the existing sales and marketing offices residing on the east side of the building to offices currently being sublet on the west side of the building. So it would be a consolidation of our offices into a smaller footprint, which actually has some advantages. Right now, I'm constantly running over to sales and marketing on the other side of the building. It'd be nice to have us more closely located together for staff interaction and meetings. The base rent would be $13,613. We have a carpet and tile upgrade and some new bathrooms. And then, as an interesting element of that, we would continue to have this boardroom space available at no cost. So this space would still be part of the deal, but we wouldn't be paying for the square footage of this facility, which I think we all agree is a pretty comfortable and well-equipped opportunity for our meetings to take place. Staying in the current location will generate a savings of $94,740 annually. Moving to Neal Road would have saved us $71,244. But based upon all the items that we've just discussed, there's no moving cost, less staff disruption. There'll be some with marketing and sales, but moving down the hall is a lot easier than moving across a part of town. We do recommend entering into a 5-year lease for the current offices, reconfigured at a cost of $13,613 per month.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. Any questions of the board? Any further discussion? Mr. Hawkins?
I read that, and it says that this room would be a common area. Is there anything discussed about letting us have priority? Because if somebody else is going to need this space at the same time we do, I mean, we use this room an awful lot. Has there been anything discussed about our meeting schedule with the landlord and having some kind of assurance that we would have this room when we need it?
We have talked in general speak regarding that. At this point, the other side of the building, there's not a firm commitment from the tenant that we're subleasing to. But being that this is our equipment and we decked out this room, our assumption would be we would have priority and would work with the folks that end up eventually on the other side to make that work.
You might want to mention something somewhere to solidify that.
Mr. Curtis?
You mentioned a 5-year lease. Any discussion of any additional options on top of that? Options on top of that, extension options? 5-year lease with maybe a 5-year option?
We have Mr. Ruffin here from Colliers who's assisted us, but he says we could do that. At this point, we had just gotten general contract terms for both of the facilities in 5 and 10, and we're looking at the low end, the 5-year lease at the low-cost option, and can tack on.
I think a 5-year lease is a fine idea, but it'd be nice to tag on a couple of 5-year options, or at least one at this particular moment in history. That'd be great, Tim.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Yeah, good job. I'll move to accept staff's recommendation.
Thank you for the motion. Ms. Cooney, seconds. Any further discussion on the question? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. That passes unanimously.
Yeah.
We'll move to item N. Review, discussion, and possible action on film and television production incentive program. Mr. Baum.
Yes, as we've previously discussed, we are pursuing film incentive for the state of Nevada, as well as the possibility of film business for Reno, Tahoe, North Lake Tahoe without an incentive in place. We're well into the process. Just got an update from our lobbying firm that things are moving along, that there's widespread support, bipartisan, set for Senate Bill 165. There is a meeting today with Senator Aaron Ford, who is putting forth the legislation with our lobbyist and also the lobbyist for the labor unions in the state of Nevada. And, you know, we really need to see this through the legislative process. Obviously, the legislature is in session through June 4th. We think this will be resolved before then. We also have existing film and TV show opportunities for Reno Tahoe that can move forward without an incentive, including a $10 million film from Sony Pictures that is looking to come here in the next 2 weeks to do their site tour but has verbally indicated that Reno is their choice for that film. That film alone would generate about $45,000 of incremental room tax revenue for the RSCVA. We also are having a pilot filmed that now appears at the Hyatt Lake Tahoe this September for a new TV series, and that show hopes to shoot 13 episodes here in the region in the coming months. So there really are two issues here. The incentive legislation, which we have been the leader on, and it's important to remind everyone, we have Porter Gordon Silver as our lobbying firm, and they've done a great job in opening doors. But Porter Gordon Silver is not an expert in the film industry and the nuances of these legislations. The IATSE union obviously has a lot to gain from their members and the Teamsters and other union employees gaining work through film and TV productions in our state growing to much larger levels. But once again, their position is this is good for our members, not necessarily understanding the nuances of the legislation and as it's been put into place in so many other states. Jeff Spillman was brought on board because of his expertise as a TV and film producer and the fact that he has in fact written legislation in other states for film incentives. He has in fact applied for film incentives and received them on projects as a producer he's been involved with both in television and film. So for example, when Aaron Ford has a meeting with our team and comes back with a list of 15 questions, those questions cannot be answered by anyone other than Mr. Spillman because they're of a technical nature. So the role that he's been playing in partnership with our lobbying firm and in partnership with the IATSE union and also in partnership with the biggest lighting and equipment manufacturer, reseller in Vegas has been to provide expertise that has answered the questions for the Governor's Office on Economic Development, for other legislators, and for staff members who are very often given the assignments to look more deeply into these situations. So we need to wrap this up in the next couple of months. We need to wrap it up on the legislative side where things will play out soon. And we need to wrap it up in terms of projects we currently have in place and deciding what we do in terms of moving forward. My recommendation is we took this to marketing and sales and they unanimously approved an additional $22,000 of expenditures to wrap up through the end of this year's legislative session. We are currently finalizing our 13-14 budget, and in the 13-14 budget, I put a total of $25,000 for the year for film and TV production initiatives. So it would be our intention, no matter what happens going forward, to shift a lot of the responsibilities for this with our staff once they're given some additional education on how they can work with the film and TV production industry to bring this business to our hotels and restaurants. I'm hoping to bring this in under $22,000, but that would be a total expenditure including any fees to Mr. Spillman, any entertaining expenses we have, and any additional expense account charges. So that would wrap this project up, then we'd move on to the next phase, which would be a much less expensive ongoing process.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. Any questions or discussion? Sadra.
Mr. Chairman, we have to date, if the report that's in our package, we've spent $67,000. And I think we need to identify or assess value for $67,000 that has been expended today. What have we accomplished? And is 22 pending appropriate?
Thank you. Mr. Dortch.
And just for clarification, is it 67 or is it 73? I mean, the first line item on the report says $6,000 not included in the total.
That is correct. That payment has not been made. I froze payments when staff advised me that we were in the $47,000 range in terms of payments to bottom line entertainment. So that payment has not been made.
So we're at 73?
73 if we make that payment, that's correct.
If we make the payment, I think we have to make the payment, don't we?
Well, there's no written contract. It was on a verbal basis, but from a professional standpoint, we should make the payment.
So the additional 22,000 is on top of the 73?
That is correct, not to exceed 22,000.
And I thought,
I'm sorry. 6 of that is in that 22.
I'm sorry?
6 of that is in that 22.
Okay, so it'd be an additional 16. on top of what's been incurred so far? Is that what you guys approved at marketing?
No, it's not what we
That's what I
approved.
thought. I
We,
thought you
I
guys
was gonna
approved
mention that.
72,
We
right?
approved 72, but that was, my understanding of what we approved was the amount that you've spent so far plus the 22. 72 included that. Correct? That's what we approved, right?
Well, we're
'Cause
kind of,
remember we went back and said we
we're
need
kind
to
of,
do
we're
that.
kind of mixing totals
So
here,
you,
though.
because you've got your expenses are included, and that's the difference, right?
That's correct. And my expenses are a subset of all my expenses, which I spend when I go to a meeting or convention, entertainment. The same with our salesperson. Those typically would not be accumulated
Right.
here. Those are really expenses that are overhead for T&E.
Right. So the 72 that we approved, I understood it to be basically the contract amount, the fees, right?
You
Mr.
are
Spillman's fees.
correct in that
Yeah,
the amounts
okay.
actually work out similar.
Yeah, so
but-
that's the 72, and then plus expenses, which would amount to whatever.
No, the expenses would be included in that,
In the 72?
yes.
If I can attempt to clarify,
I'm a
the
little
72
confused.
was payments to Bottom Line Entertainment.
Right.
To Chris's point, not his travel, not our
Right.
salesperson travel, not other
Right.
marketing programs, to specifically Bottom Line Entertainment.
Right.
Was what was brought to
That's
sales
what we
and marketing.
specifically approved. And the 72 included going forward with the 22.
Wrapping this up
Correct.
and leveraging down the fees as less of a role is played.
Correct.
Once again, that is a maximum. If we don't need Mr. Spillman's services, he won't get paid anything, or he'll get paid $1,000 or whatever, based upon what we ask him to do, based on what happens to the legislature in the next the coming weeks.
Just a comment. I think, we're always looking for new opportunities to bring business to this community, and I thought, when Chris brought this up initially, we felt that it was a viable thing that we wanted to explore. It's a difficult thing to get on with the legislature and whatnot, but at this point, we've invested this much into it. Another 22 to me would seem to be a good investment to finalize and see if we can really make this happen.
And really,
That
it's
was my
another,
point.
about another 15, 16 is what it really
Right.
is.
So I think at this point, we're in it. Let's see what we can do with it, and hopefully we can, we can bring to fruition some business.
And I think,
here.
I want to reiterate what I said before, because it's a very important perspective, I believe. If you look at the $10 million film that Sony has verbally committed to this region, and the TV series, the room tax revenue from those two groups alone would offset our entire expenditure up to this point. So even without an incentive, even if we're not successful in the legislature going forward, we would bring an incremental revenue as a result of these efforts through Mr. Spillman that would offset our expenses. And so, even if we never booked another film going forward, with these two projects, we've got a net total expense of zero to have pursued this. I was brought on board to bring new ideas and new business segments to this destination. There's a relatively short list of things you can go after. Film and television for the state next to Hollywood, the pitiful volume we get, and the business that goes elsewhere. This board approved $55,000 at the last meeting for the trade show event. And, that's a bit of a gamble, but we're bringing in 75 top trade show executives around the country, and we think that's worth the money. So on a relative basis, we have expenditures to explore new opportunities all the time in this price range. The difference is this one, there's a specific revenue that's going to come out of what's been started, regardless of the incentive being passed or not being passed.
And I don't disagree with you, and I think we embrace the idea of moving forward with this. I think one of the challenges, though, is the amount of money that you spent without the board's approval. I mean, you're over the $50,000 limit on fees paid to between expenses and fees to Bottom Line Entertainment, and you committed another $6 without this board's approval. And I think that's where the challenge is we've got to get our arms around that, but in the same token, that is something that this board should have been made aware of prior to that being committed. And I don't know how it happened. I mean, I would think that you would have internal controls to prevent that from happening, but this board clearly should have known about that prior to us finding out that we're over $50,000 today and that we've got another $6,000 committed. I mean, we embrace the idea, no doubt about it. I think everyone at this table said, hey, this is worth a gamble, let's go after it. But in the same token, we should have been aware.
Well, and I did stop spending when it was at 47.
Yeah, I understand you stopped spending, but you're committed.
Right.
I mean, whether you stopped, you didn't really stop spending. I mean, you committed the money. You just haven't wrote him the check yet. I mean, we're going to have to pay it.
Right.
Right.
And you intend to spend another 20. That's absolutely been your intent. So you willingly entered into activities knowing you were going to bust the 50 that we specifically restricted it to. I absolutely agree that we need new business. 20 years ago, the state was making $23 million in film productions revenue because of. They broke the 120-some mark 4 years later when they put a new program together. And that's what I've continued to say. There's a working group that we can work with. Yes, I know they have restrictions from being able to lobby, but they can be the industry facts and data providers for you. And I'm wondering at this point, we're this far into the legislative process, if our own legislative team isn't better equipped and prepared and justified in fulfilling the lobbying efforts through the rest of the session. Do we need to spend 22 in addition to having our lobbying team there? Brett, do you have anything to comment on about that? I'm sorry, I haven't asked you previously.
Mr. Higgins just
and Sean's here too, so Sean, feel free to go up to the podium if you want. I will say this, it's hard for us to tell if there's technical questions that will still come up. Right now, we have answered every single question that the committee and the committee staff has come up with, and Mr. Spillman's been instrumental in answering those questions. So it's hard to tell if his expertise will be needed more. I think Sean and I have a lot better grip on the issue and the concept. And as far as the legislation goes, we believe there's a good appetite to get this bill moving out of this committee. Everyone has bought off that this is a great concept. The problem, legislators, and the problem that we have as lobbyists to sell it is how much of a risk they want to put the state budget at to do this program.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of the lobbying where we're at. Sean could probably, he's taken the lead on this bill for you guys, so he can give you a little bit more perspective. But Mr. Spillman, we don't know how much he could be needed in the future. As of now, we've answered every single question that's been asked. So, Sean, I don't know if you want to.
Can that technical information be received from the state agency that's performing the duty day in and day out?
The information that, there has been questions that the state agency, Sean's gone directly to them, and we've gotten information from them. As far as how the incentive works, Mr. Spillman's been instrumental in answering those type of questions.
Mr. Higgins?
Good morning, everyone. I'll echo what Brett said. Mr. Spillman, obviously, in the technical aspect, has been instrumental. We've had page upon page of questions that, while Brett and I can be lobbyists, we're not qualified to answer some of those questions.
Mr. Higgins, will you please state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, Sean Higgins, Porter Gordon Silver. Apologize. The technical questions which we are not equipped to answer, we have looked to Mr. Spillman to answer those questions, and he has certainly helped along the process. He has been down there a couple times. I will tell you, I met with Senator Ford last night, and he is having another meeting with his staff today to go over the issues. We have the bill has progressed from its infancy to today, and I believe it will get a second hearing, and I believe it will get out of the Senate. Speaker Kirkpatrick has an appetite to pass the bill as well. The governor's office, I've met with Steve Hill at least on 5 occasions on this bill. Everyone has an appetite to pass the bill. It's what's the final form of that bill going to look like? What's the incentive going to be? How much is the state willing to risk? And Mr. Spillman was instrumental in A, writing the legislation because he had experience in it. B, there were all kinds of questions. He went as far as to prepare a mock production of a $10 million film down to the smallest detail. So he has certainly been instrumental in answering questions that we certainly could not answer. I think going forward, it is, as Brett says, more of a lobbying effort than it is a technical effort at this point in time. So I don't see, on a go-forward basis, his need to be as heavily involved as he has been to this time, because now I really think it's up to Brett and I to do our jobs and try to push this through. I'm happy to answer any questions about that specific legislation and anything else.
That answers my question. So if I hear you correctly, you would agree that going forward, you guys are more equipped to fulfill the lobbying side than to have 20 whatever more $1,000 expended on the Spillman.
I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree with that statement on a go-forward basis, but I do want to make sure you understand, we wouldn't be where we're today without his input.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate that, but I don't want to be sitting here next month and being upset that he had to spend additional money without our approval. I'd rather approve it today and tell him to proceed with caution, have it available, proceed with caution. If you don't need him, as he said, I think Chris said, if he doesn't need him, he won't use him. But if we approve it, it's there, and we're really talking 16,000, maybe even a little less than that, I think, right? Instead of the 22, because we've already committed the other. But I'd rather have him have it available in case, I mean, they might come and say, hey, we need to get this question answered for somebody. I mean, you never know, correct?
That's a possibility, but I will say, we have had 4 meetings with the senator and his staff at a minimum, and when I say meetings, a couple of them lasted 2-3 hours, going through technical information. So we really have, gotten them every answer we are capable, or Mr. Spillman is capable of getting them, and we've answered every question they've asked us. So okay. I think we are really at a point where if there's more questions, I'm not sure what they would be.
And I think that's what, I mean, when we get a report back, I mean, we'll know whether they needed him or not. So we'll know if he had to use the additional funds that are available. If not, I mean, he doesn't need it, he doesn't need it. But I think I'd rather have him in a position where he can use it if needed than coming back next month saying, hey, something came up and we had to, we go over my limit again.
Well, there's also the additional element of when Sony Pictures comes here to look at the facilities and decide where they're going to stay and everything else, Mr. Spillman brought that business to this destination. So, I'd like the flexibility to pay him $1,000 to accompany the senior production executive from Screen Gems division of Sony to come here in 3 weeks. That individual can't come here without the person who's been responsible for him getting this production to this destination. So, I agree. We're tailing down, as I indicated when I spoke to marketing and sales. There are 2 elements here. There's the legislation, and there's the existing business that we're hoping to finalize in the coming weeks.
Any other discussion or comments from the board? Sandra?
I'm not sure that we've seen the responsiveness to direction that we've given previously for expenditures, not just on this item, but others, and that's why I hesitate. There seems to be a very generous spirit about sharing dollars that were not approved or that were questionable. So I'm very uncomfortable with leaving an open-ended another 16 or 20, however we calculate that math, because I believe it would be spent, and you would have some way to justify it that would be marginal in need. The activity needs to be performed. Is it best through that contractor, through your own staff, through a state agency, or through our lobbying group? That's the question. So I would leave it that. Not up to the 16, I think that's ridiculous, because it just invites the opportunity to spend it. And if we could put a greater approval level on that anything from this day forward needs to be approved by Finance Committee or by the chairman. Just so that we have some precautions in there. We haven't seen that kind of determination previously.
Thank you. Comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still comfortable moving forward, and I think, we asked for an accounting of it and justification of it when it's spent. I mean, bring it back to us and give us an accounting of it and a justification of it, and I just proceed with caution. I think we've got to give our CEO some leeway, when he's out there trying to generate business for this community, and
I totally agree. We do need to give him the leeway, but he also needs to show us that he follows direction that we give.
Right, and that's why I think if we tell him, you know, if you're gonna spend any of that 16,000, come back with an accounting and justification of why you spent it. You know? But I think, since we only meet once a month, and the finance committee doesn't meet for a couple weeks, I think we've gotta give him the ability to move forward.
Ms. Weber?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why can't we have it go through? I mean, I think that we have to give them the ability to move forward. We're already at this point. But why can't we have the chairman be involved, or the vice chairman, or whoever, just to make sure that we, the board, has that clarification?
I don't think we ever wanna go down that road.
No?
You want to micromanage, you want someone here, I mean, he has to call the chairman before he makes a move on something? I'm against it on anything.
Okay.
I mean, that's my personal opinion. I don't know how everyone else feels, but that's not our job. You know, the chairman's not paid to make those decisions. He is. And if we don't like it, we can let him know that.
Right.
But the chairman's not paid to make those decisions. That's my opinion.
Well, I believe we're letting them know right now that we're not happy about it. And so I agree, but I don't see why the chairman couldn't just at least be told, so it's at least the board. I mean,
Hey, anyone here at this table can ask him to let them know,
Okay.
you know, what they're doing with what's going on with this item, and
I get
you know,
it.
I'd like to be kept up to date. Any of us can ask that question, and I would expect him to respond to them. But to require that you go through any member of this board before you make a decision, other than decisions that we need to make globally, I'm not in favor of that.
If I might, let me try to summarize so we can move forward on this in some fashion. I think there's been some dissatisfaction with the way this has been handled. If I go back to the original discussion, there was unanimity amongst the group, and I believe that may have been the finance or the marketing committee when that was first, this whole concept was first discussed about bringing Mr. Stillman in. There's been a lack of communication with the board. I think that's been a problem, and that obviously needs to get fixed in some fashion so that the board is updated on where the money is being spent, how it's being spent, and the changes or shifting that's going on in strategies. I tend to agree with Mr. Dortch. I'm sympathetic to Ms. Adra's concerns. I share those concerns. If you all recall back in, I guess it was probably almost a year ago in the summer, I wanted to put some really tight constraints on the CEO's ability to sign for work. And the number I set was probably a little too low for the comfort for most, and I understand that. But the point is that when there are significant moves made by our CEO that's committing dollars either through what could be considered contractual obligations, which has occurred with Mr. Stillman, or in those areas where significant amounts of personal expenses have been incurred, I think the board needs to be advised of that. So I think where we are is that we need to authorize the chairman to move forward, the CEO to move forward. If you don't exercise discretion based on what you've heard this morning, I think that would be a mistake. We have an ongoing contract with Porter Gordon Silver to do our advocacy for us. If they need that input from you or from your consultant, then I think they need to ask for that, and that's going to be good enough for me. So anyway, I think we need to move on this in some fashion. So I'll entertain a motion. Sorry. Okay, Mr. Kerrigan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in for 1 second and say I agree with everything that's been said. The next agenda item will take care of part of the problem because I think it's the evaluation, if I'm not correct. Is that right?
Yes.
So we can bring this back up, Sharon, exactly what you're saying about, you know, overspending, the lack of communication on the next agenda item. But I agree with Dwight on this one. I mean, we have a contractual agreement. I don't want to micromanage. I've said that before to somebody who we hired as a CEO. So I think we better press on, and please remind everybody to bring that up next agenda item.
So unless there's other discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Before I make the motion, can I clarify what the amount is? What's the total amount? Is it 72?
I'll tell you what I think it is.
What is it?
And we'll see.
Yes.
The way
I was looking at Brian, he could help me out
I
with
mean,
this.
the way I'm looking at it, and this is just, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm taking the money that's been paid to Bottom Line Entertainment and expenses and fees, which gets us to just over 50,000, plus the 6,000 that's committed, so that gets us to about 56, 57,000, right? And so I would say that that caps at 22, so that's about 15, 16 additional thousand, correct?
Correct. I think, again, we're talking, relating back to the sales and marketing discussion, about 72,000 in round numbers.
Exactly where we were at, yeah.
Okay, so that's the way I'm interpreting this.
To Bottom Line Entertainment, obviously, those other expenses we discussed are outside of that number
Correct,
that
so
we're
just
discussing.
normal.
And I hear you loud and
expense
clear,
accounts.
and it's my intention to bring it in under that. So that is a worst-case scenario. Worst case being that the things flare up in Carson City, and his presence is required to support our team.
I make a motion to ratify the marketing committee's recommendation of 72,000 total compensation for Mr. Spillman for this project.
Thank you.
Second.
And I have a second from Mr. Dortch. Any further discussion?
I'll support the motion with extreme caution. We've had too much history that hasn't given us a reason to, but I will.
Thank you. On the motion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We'll move to item, thank you for the discussion, by the way, and thank you for the points that you raised, Mr. Kerrigan. We'll move to item O, review and discussion of the President CEO performance evaluation for calendar year 2012.
Good morning. I wanted to spend just a minute to remind everybody of how this process is going to be, because we had a CEO that started the December 31st of 2011 off fiscal year. So previously, in previous meetings, we had met and discussed how the reviews would go. So this review today is for calendar year 2012. You've been emailed the results of all of those evaluation. If anybody needs those, please let me know and I can walk one down to you. And so you have the results of all of that evaluation for everybody who took the actual survey. I wanted to also go over what the process will be going moving forward, because I think there's some confusion for that as well. At the board retreat, we also the board approved goals for fiscal year 2012 and 13. Starting in June, the review process for 12-13 will occur, with the overall evaluation for that fiscal year occurring in September. Okay? Next month, in April, we will start at the Personnel and Finance Committee to start going over goals for fiscal year 13-14. So then we are on the consistent process where the discussion about goals begins as early as April to be approved prior to July 1, when the fiscal year starts, so everybody is on the same page as to what the goals are for that following fiscal year. So this evaluation today is obviously off the timetable that's in the policy, because we are trying to fix it to get it onto that fiscal year. Okay. So you basically have two areas that you're looking at. Under the policy, there is the merit evaluation, and you all, or the majority of everyone here, filled out those evaluations, and you know how the overall results. The other portion of that is the incentive pay. Under the policy, incentive pay can be a maximum of 20% of base salary. Since base salary is $225,000, 20% of that is $45,000. Okay. And so I am here if there are any questions, and then I will just move it on.
Thank you, Molly. Any questions from members of the board? Further explanation needed? Mr. Curtis.
We're talking about merit performance and incentive award. And some of you may recall my concerns that I tried to express at the Finance Committee meeting, but then was told that we would discuss it at the board meeting. And then you may recall also the attempt to go ahead and discuss that at the November retreat/board meeting, which also failed. So my question is, when do we get to talk about base salary? In my experience, when I hire someone, I ask them to do a job, and I evaluate them on that basis. If they do a great job, I'm willing to consider incentive or merit or bonus or whatever you want to call it. We've evaluated both merit performance evaluation and incentive award. I want to know what we're supposed to do with this. Can somebody help me with that?
The salary is set, the initial salary was set by contract. Then if you go through the policy, and the base pay can be anywhere from a range of $225,000 to $265,000. And it does indicate that salary range can be reviewed, so that means you can do a salary survey for CEOs of this type of position in the event that you need to change that range. As far as merit pay, where you may increase the base salary, that is part of your merit evaluation. I will tell you that in the last 6 years, there has been one, and it was July 1st, 2012, merit increase for staff of the RSCVA. It was a 3% increase. Okay? It's within the discretion of the board whether or not a merit pay increase would be given. The policy specifically says any merit pay award shall be in line with the average merit pay increase given to the RSCVA staff. And again, that was 3% effective July 1, 2012. Incentive pay is more looked at as more like a bonus pay. Here's your base salary for doing the job, and then there is the incentive pay, which is considered more like a bonus pay. And under the policy, there are specific things that, and those are what related to those specific goals that were approved by the board. Does that assist? If you have any other questions?
Ms. Cooney?
On the merit increase last year, you said 3%. What staff was given across the board. So did everybody just get 3%? It was just a merit, or was it based on performance and there was a scale and all that kind of stuff?
Charlotte, do you or somebody else?
It was 3% across the board.
So everybody just got 3%.
And that was primarily because there hadn't been any increases 4 years prior to that.
And in the last year, were there any unpaid time offs or anything like that financially?
Furloughs?
That was done? Furloughs?
We've had 3 furloughs in the previous 4 fiscal years.
Okay, but this past year,
This past year, we did not.
so you're basically back on sort of a normal budgeting.
One other thing, just on the merit pay, there is nothing budgeted moving forward for an additional merit pay increase.
Any other questions? I might try to get at Paul's issue. The question, I guess, as I heard it, was what do we do with this information? And I think what you do with it is use it to use the process as a way of expressing issues, concerns, satisfaction, dissatisfaction. And then when you get the result back, I looked at it as an example, the merit performance process, and I looked at it and I said, if I take 3 as being average, not doing great, not doing poorly, if I take it as being average, the number was 3.38, just as an average of those incremental pieces. And so I think that might be considered sort of a statement of how the board is seeing general performance. And that's different than the bonus issue, because the bonus issue was based on those those elements of the strategic plan that were adopted by the board, and the percentages were set. So that's a little bit different creature. And if one looks at the written comments, I think there is some constructive criticism there that would be useful to the CEO. And perhaps the base issue for item O is, does the board see it appropriate to make an incremental adjustment to the base salary? I think that's the threshold issue. And if the answer to that is yes, then what would that amount be? If the answer is no, then we move on to item P. So that's my assessment of it. And I don't know if that helps with the question that you asked. But okay, maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Paul?
So with regard to the merit pay issue, we're talking about an increase in base salary specifically for the CEO, not everybody else?
Right.
Just him? Okay, that's one issue.
That's the only one we control.
And then I wasn't there during the discussions, so I wasn't certain how the expectations were set during the negotiations for when Chris was hired. And so without understanding that, it's a little difficult for me to understand, in reading the portion about incentive award score, in reading through it, it's hard to say that he didn't do these things, but I note that there's a couple of zeros on here, several zeros, which to me indicate that he didn't even do it, which is hard for me to fathom. And I would ask anybody that provided zeros to come forward and say, why a zero? Now, you may not like the plan, you may not like what he did, but he did it. And I am one that was terrifically critical of the process. But I can't get around the fact that he did it. And given there was no guidance provided at the time, he did a pretty doggone good job of it and has been providing, I think, pretty good leadership from that point forward. Now, do I like everything? Maybe not. But I don't understand, and I would like to understand, how a score of 0 could have been suggested. And so help me out on that one.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Yeah, Paul, I'll try to help you out. I don't think a score of 0, I think it means highly disagree. And so I think that if you take a look, hopefully Chris is going to take a look at this and say, you know, there's however many people how many people we have on this board? 11? 13. Okay, so there's 11 that answered it. In one section, four people on this board feel like that they're not being kept informed of what's going on in the RSCVA. And I think that as a CEO, Chris ought to take that and say, well, okay, who cares who the 4 are? There's obviously 4 board members that don't feel like they're in the loop. Okay, and whether it's a 0 or not, I mean, who cares about the system? I think it's highly disagreed part of it. I don't know what neutral meant. Okay, I thought that was a lousy, answer. What does neutral mean? You're neutral on what? That he's doing anything? I mean, I'd rather say I agree or I disagree. I think there's being neutral, I think it's an easy way out. So I just hopefully, and this is a tool for us if anybody wanted to do a merit or incentive pay. I think if you remember what my problem was, I wanted to have the salary down to where you can have a bonus of up to $40,000. In other words, why should you work, if you're getting $40,000 less and you say, oh, I'm going to work harder to get that $40,000, but if you just hand it to him as a base salary, then you just say, okay, is he doing his job? Yes, great job. Should I give him any merit pay for that? Why? If you're doing your job, you're doing your job. If you go above and beyond that, okay. But I just think this is a good tool for Chris to take a look at it after his first year here to say, hey, then maybe I can improve in a few things, especially communication.
Mr. Finland.
Thank you. You've got merit and incentive are 2 completely different programs, and an incentive program should be set up with specific goals that we shouldn't be judging whether we think he made them or not. You make them or you don't make them. Versus the merit system, there does become an opinion as to how you think a person is performing. And so in this case, I know some of these incentives were a little bit marginal, but that should be the specific goal. If you get to here, you get your 10% max in that particular category. Next category, if it's worth 20% and you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. And I think that's why there was a little bit of question between the two. So having a 0 or having a 5 when there's a specific target is very difficult, I think, for us to have gone through that process. Versus the merit, where we all have opinions as to the performance, generally speaking.
Any other comments? Ms.
I have a general question. I've been on this board for 3.5 years. This is the first time I've actually been through this process because of all of our changes. What effect does the overall health of the organization have on this discussion, as far as where the budget is, how much money is being generated? If this were a business, we'd be looking at what's the bottom line, what's the budget, can we afford to be giving an incentive or a merit raise at this point to the CEO.
If I can just address what the policy says related to that, the incentive pay is within the sole discretion of the board. So while there are percentages about where each goal was indicated, and it was difficult with calendar year 2012 goals because starting into the position, there weren't actual numerical targets to reach. And that is something that the marketing committee discussed as well. But what you should know, and all of those considerations go into play, is the overall fiscal ability for the agency to, and that is why the policy is written in such a way that says incentive pay award is given in the sole discretion of the board. Meaning you have leeway.
Any follow-up questions?
Yeah, it does.
Mr. Curtis?
I know we went through this when we hired Chris, but my memory is not as keen as it used to be, perhaps. But from an industry perspective, where does the salary and benefits of the RSCVA relate to other comparable positions within the country? Can somebody remind me of, my recollection was that we were sort of a little bit above normal and above average. Is that a correct recollection?
Mr. George?
Yeah, when you factor in our salary and benefits, we're actually probably more in line and maybe even a little high. Salary alone, I think we were considerably below in the industry average.
I think we were a little bit below the industry average, if not, on the lower end. But then when you add, I think when you were going through that, Dwight, you added in the benefits.
The benefits.
Put us kind of average or a little bit
I mean,
above.
most of the agencies aren't public agencies that benefit from PERS, I think was the issue, and that's a huge benefit. So I think that was, when we calculated this out, it was with the benefits, we were probably closer to average, maybe even a little above average on the industry average for markets our size.
That was my recollection.
But on salary alone, we were low.
As it relates to incentive, when everything that we have done and everything that was weighed, the percentages, where does that lie? I mean, if Chris is eligible for X percent of his salary, based on what we have filled out, what would that dollar amount be today?
Just by solely doing the math, and again, it's completely within the discretion of the board, but when you add up all of the averages for each section, it was 50.9%. If you have a maximum of 45,000 and you take approximately 50.9%, it's about $22,500, $23,000.
Okay. And saying that we have the discretion to say whatever we want, isn't that what we just did by filling this out? Isn't that what we have stated as to what we want to do?
Personally, I look at it as we evaluate so that we can get an idea of how we think we're doing, and then both incentive and merit are completely at the discretion of the board. At that point, it's not based upon a percentage of. I mean, it's completely at the discretion of the board. And I think one of the things we've got to consider too is the cycle we're on. Keep in mind, we're doing this again in 6 months. We're not doing it on an annual, a year from now. It's again in 6 months to get us on the schedule we want to be on, which is the appropriate schedule, because then we can tie it to goals that are established during the budget process, which is a much more cleaner process. So I think we need to keep that in mind, and that's kind of the way I guess I'm going to answer Beth's question from earlier. Is I think that we can take into account the financial situation, the financial position of the organization as a whole. I think that's all part of the discussion that we have to have. Is, I mean, on every board that we serve on, I think over the last 5 years, there's been times when we've told either our CEO or our city manager or someone that, hey, you're doing a fantastic job, we just don't have any extra money for you. You know, I mean, and I would be willing to bet that there's people at this table in the private sector that have been in that same position. So, I mean, I do think that all of those things can be taken into consideration, in my opinion. So, does that answer that question a little better?
It does. It does because, you know, to your point, it's not as cut and dry as this process would say. I mean, you do have to take into consideration what the current economy is, what message you're sending to the staff, what the overall budget is doing and looks like it will do, in addition to the fact that, you know, we're going to turn around here and do another review for the fiscal year pretty quickly. So.
Mr. Kerrigan.
I'd just like to add, though, during the negotiation process when we were trying to hire Chris, he obviously had an expectation of a much higher salary coming in. And during the negotiation process, it was, would you be willing to accept a lower salary with the ability to get the bonus to compensate that? Now, he knew that that bonus is going to be contingent upon him performing, but that was, and I think that's important to know, is when we were negotiating his contract, I asked him to take a lower salary. Keep in mind, our prior CEO was at 240?
I believe that's correct.
240-ish. And I think the range that we put out when we were initially going out was up to 250?
I don't recall.
I mean, something like that. So I think the expectation coming in was a higher salary, and during the negotiating process, I asked him to take a lower salary with the ability of having a bonus to backfill. So I think that's something important to keep in mind.
Mr. Finland?
Thank you. And I think that's fair. And I think, not to simplify it, but do we feel like we're better off today than we were a year and a half ago? I mean, it's not that simple, but do we feel better about that?
Thank you for that observation. I looked at this, spent a fair amount of time looking at this, and I've had to engage in this kind of discussion before, sitting over where Chris was, and it's difficult to keep everyone informed, difficult to keep everyone happy. Because we all come from different places, you know, so I think that's an issue. But when I look at the performance evaluation, I didn't see neutral as I don't care. What I saw that was neutral to me was an average, and I gave him a couple of averages. You know, how would I assess him against someone else in a similar business? But if I look at that, I think what the group did was basically said, yeah, we don't think he's doing poorly, we don't think he's doing great, but on average, sort of in the middle. And there were some things that I marked Chris up very, very highly on. I think to answer Fred's question about where we are today versus where we were a year ago, I think we've got a strong marketing program. We've seen some significant changes in things that are going on internally within the staff. We've seen significant improvement in staff capability. And I think that's an important element of what this board needs to consider. So I sort of set the performance evaluation aside and said, Chris will pay attention to this. He'll take heed. There's some things that need improvement. Those things were laid out, I think, pretty clearly. So I tended to focus on the incentive award, and I agree with Fred. I think, you know, once we set that, agreed to the elements of the strategic plan, we said these are the things we're going to judge you on. I think that's how we have to do it. And so that's where I spent most of my time. And if you take the percentages that Molly indicated, my calculation came up to $24,750 as a bonus, and I'm comfortable, frankly, awarding a bonus at that level because I think we've seen a significant change in the image of this agency. We've seen a significant change in how the Reno Sparks Lake Tahoe area is perceived outside of the Reno area and outside of our state, and I think those are very, very important. The 40,000 room night comment that Chris made this morning, I think that's important, and I think that we want to see more of that, but we're not going to see that in my view, if we begin to pull back that carrot that's out there. And we've said, you performed, this is what we're going to do. I think we need to stand up and do that. So I'm comfortable with that, and it's a calculation, you know, that's kind of cold. If there's sentiment that you want to do more than that, that's appropriate, that's okay, but it does not affect the base pay. The base pay stays the same. That goes back to what you said. Mr. Curtis.
Okay, thank you. I think you're wrong there. Merit pay, I think, is a base pay increase. I think incentive pay is a bonus.
It is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the two things you have to take a look at, and I think you have to split these two apart. One of the problems I have with the incentive pay is that it's not specific enough. How many days here's an example. It says work with the vice president of sales to maximize convention sales. How many days is a convention center used a year? Just as an average. Give me an average. 80? Just give me, I don't.
I mean, total utilization of the facility is about 20%.
Okay, so for me, an incentive would be, if you can raise that up from 20% to 35%, you get this. That's an incentive to me. Not saying do you work, hopefully I hope you're working with John. I mean, you know, if you're not, then, yeah, but that's not incentive to me. Incentive to me is give him some concrete things to work on. Hey, bring more convention sales in here, you get a piece of the action. Okay? I mean, if you bring in, you know, a safari club and they're not supposed to be here and it's whatever the amount of money is, then you cut out a piece of that. Merit pay to me is, hey, is this organization better off this year than it was last year? Because remember, when you're doing a merit pay increase, that stays with it forever. An incentive is one-time shot. Okay?
Just to be clear, I was not advocating an incentive increase. I'm not suggesting that we change the base pay, but I do think
No, you just said it backwards. You said you wanted a merit pay, right?
No.
Oh, you want incentive?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think they're concrete enough to say that. I think it behooves this board and it's us to make the incentive pay, whatever the categories are, more, put it in concrete. Say, hey, if you do A, B, and C, not if you talk to and work with the vice president. Hopefully he's working with the vice president. I mean, that's part of his job. But I mean, let's put some specific numbers on there. And we've been slacking that. I can tell you right now, we have been. And we're having a retreat on Monday. Are we going to do anything, by the way? Or am I going to sit there for an hour and a half and listen to somebody lecture me on gaming and then spend 10 minutes on what we were really supposed to spend 4 hours on? Just general question. Okay.
I agree with you that Monday we need to set some specific numbers. I have some notes based on what I think should be changed in that strategic plan, because I want to see some real meat and potatoes in there. This business of talking about contacts and visits, that's great, but that's not putting heads in beds, and that's what we want. And I agree with you that if...
Yeah, going back to somebody who said it's very difficult to keep this, I think you said it, Jerry, very difficult to keep this board informed. No, it's not. It's called email and telephone, just to let everybody know what's going on. Because my biggest heartburn on this board is I said it, and I'll be the one to let you know who said this. If you're not the chairman or the vice chairman, I feel like you don't know what's going on in this board.
Sometimes the vice chair doesn't know either. But Mr. Finland.
Thank you. Mike, I agree. Our concrete numbers moving forward have got to be solid. It needs to be measurable to either you make it or you don't make it. And so I'm with you there. I just think this is what we have in place for this particular time. And if we made mistakes, that's our fault. It shouldn't be determining Chris's bonus this time. By moving forward, absolutely. Room nights, specifics, we need to do that.
Mr. Dortch?
Yeah, and that's, again, my hope is by moving this to tied into the budget process, tied into our fiscal year, where we actually start putting, tie bonuses to what we put out in the budget, what we're looking for as far as goals set for the coming year. That's the whole purpose of getting us on a fiscal year evaluation instead of a mid-year evaluation. I think that's the challenge. Unfortunately, when we set this up, he was hired in January and we said he gets a one-year evaluation, and that's why we're here today instead of tied to the fiscal year. And I don't think we thought that through at the time, but I think getting us on a regular schedule tied to the budget is going to be much better, and I think we can hopefully put some real numbers to it. Mike, I agree with you. But I'm hoping we can, as we go through the budget process, we can put some real numbers to it and some measurables. I'm a little weary of saying increase the occupancy of the convention center by any percent, because really their goal is to sell the destination. And if they're selling You know, a convention at the Hyatt or a convention at the Pep Mill or a convention at the Nugget, to me, that's just as good. I mean, we're bringing people here. So I think to tie it directly to one of our properties, I don't think that that's going to really be appropriate. But I agree with you that we need some measurables. But I mean, I think we got to be cautious in how we do that too.
Ms. Hadra?
I also am struggling with the disconnect between the two different ways that we evaluate. And I think we need to clarify that before we hit the annual. And I would agree, someone said that the neutral in the evaluation side, I looked at that as an average as well. So if I tallied up all of the cumulative scores that were here, it was 30.36 divided by the 9. On an evaluation level, that equates to that this board as a whole gives him an average score of 3.37, average, 3.37. Then you roll over to the incentive, and it's entirely different. They don't connect with what we just did on the evaluation side. So I find it really confusing, and I know everyone else did when I was trying to fill that form out, because you just completed the evaluation, and then here it doesn't really even connect to. So on the incentive side, we're saying it doesn't matter how we feel about your performance of the entire operations. It's just these wordy questions that we're building an incentive around. And that disconnect is just really uncomfortable, and I think that it doesn't speak well of the entire intent of the board. So we need to clean that up. And I would agree that consideration of times is a factor, and budget availabilities is a factor for, yep, we agree that you've performed against this strategic plan. We just can't, given the resources that we have available, we may not be able to step up to the plate to what the numbers calculate to.
Any other comments, Mr. Curtis?
You know, I guess people's experiences add up to their perspectives. And I have different experiences, as we all do, which is kind of the interesting thing about it, being on a board, especially one like this. And my experience in terms of incentives are a little different than has been expressed. And I've tried over my career many different incentive policies, and I find oftentimes people head for the incentive and forget what their job is. And so over the years, I've adopted a position whereby I very clearly articulate what the job is, and if they, in my opinion, exceed those expectations and do a great job, I give them a bonus. So the way, and I filled out all the numbers, and I filled out all the things, and I can look at the math, and I can add up the averages, and I can do all the rest. And what's sort of interesting to me is that doing it my way, I ask myself the same question that Fred said: are we better off now than we were before? Has Chris done a good job for this organization, given the tools he's been given? And then I go back to what Dwight provided, which was the negotiation in the first place. And so all that swirls around in my head, and I come up with the conclusion that I'd probably give him about a $30,000 bonus, which is interestingly pretty doggone close to the mathematical average that we've arrived at. In terms of merit increases, which translates to base salary, there has been feedback provided, which is perhaps of some benefit. I would suggest that that feedback be provided on an ongoing basis, both personally and as a board collectively. But my feeling is that we ought to give them a $30,000 incentive bonus for this period. And I'd put that in a motion. No merit increase. No merit increase, that's a base salary increase, and I oppose that at this point.
Any other comments?
Well, I think you got to see if you got a second. Yeah, I think you got to see if you've got a second to his motion.
Was that a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Do I have a second?
Fred seconded.
I do have a second. Thank you. Okay, so I have a motion to award a $30,000 incentive bonus to the CEO. And a second. Any further discussion?
I just have one question. Is that in the budget? You were asking about the financial stability. Is the 30,000, has it been budgeted?
There's a total of 45,000 allocated for the current fiscal year for incentive for the CEO.
Any further discussion? Mr. Dirk?
Yeah, and I'm not going to support the motion. I think that's, I'll support some incentive, but I think it's too much, and I think it's too much when you look at the evaluations, and I think my scores were probably higher than what the averages are, but when you look at the overall scores from this board, I mean, there's some issues that need to be addressed, and we're doing another evaluation in 6 months, and I think Chris has gotten the message by looking at those scores and some of the comments that were made in there, and I clearly think he needs to address those. I think this board needs to be comfortable that he's going to make the adjustments that he needs to make to better communicate with this board and to better, and Chris, I mean, you and I have talked. I mean, some of the stuff you're doing, I think, is fabulous. I mean, I think we are moving in the right direction. I think there's great things happening. I think there's a buzz about us out there. But we're doing this again in 6 months. And, you know, in 6 months, are we going to be looking at another $30,000 or $40,000 bonus based upon what he's done now? So I'm not comfortable with 30. And I do think, I think you've gotten the message that there are things you need to improve upon, clearly. I think you can. I have every bit of confidence that you're going to look at that and go out and make sure that you're taking care of those issues. And I would think that that's how we move forward is, I'll agree to some incentive right now, but let's say we're going to give you some, but in 6 months, we want to see these improvements, and at that point in time, we could even give you more. I would be more comfortable with that.
Mr. Finland?
Thank you. In my opinion, that relates to the base pay. All of the items that we've discussed where we feel like Chris needs to strengthen, that's base pay. To me, that's not the bonus. That's where I see it. So
I understand that. And again, I guess what I'm tying it to is I don't think I've got enough information in a year to be completely confident, although I think, like I said, I think there's some great things, and I think the numbers are finally starting to improve. But, you know, 1 month or 2 months doesn't really tell me that we're there yet. You know, but I do think we're improving. I think there's some great things happening. And again, it is at the discretion of us on how we do this. And if you think there's a reason for merit, I'd entertain it, but I would rather see us do some incentive now, then we'll look at merit and incentive when we get on the right schedule and we look at it in September.
I don't think we should do merit now, because again, that's a separate thing, but I think the bonus is based on the other bonus questions, the measurables.
Ms. Weber?
Thank you. Did the staff get a 3% increase? I think we need to keep that in consideration. Maybe not now, maybe in 6 months, but I think that needs to be considered. So I just want to say that. And what would 3% be of his current salary? Has anyone?
7,000.
How much?
About 7.
Just for clarification, I didn't get that 3%.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my point. So I think that is, we need to keep that in consideration for the merit or whatever.
Just to clarify on the merit, that was effective 7/1.
Right.
Any further discussion? On the motion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. No, same sign?
No?
No.
You need a hand count?
Show of hands. All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Be 3. All opposed, same sign. That motion fails. Do you have another motion?
Little side negotiations, well, I think based on the numbers, I think that's a good way to go back to it. I do believe, Mike, you're spot on. We have been working through the strategic plan on getting some more really specific numbers to protect both sides and be very clear on when we go forward. I don't think these incentives that we approved before, as far as the goals, are specific enough. Excuse me, it's easy for me to say. But I would like to make a motion that we no merit increase and a $20,000 bonus based on where the score actually came in.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Discussion on the motion.
I'll go ahead and support the motion, but I do want to emphasize, Chris, I want these numbers to be higher in September. I mean, so whatever you need to do to communicate better with the people that have concerns, I think we need to get there. You know, I mean, I agree with Paul earlier on. I don't know how you put zeros down on some of these things, but obviously if someone's putting a zero down, it's because they're not happy with what's happening. It's not. Maybe we can make the argument that you did those things, but if someone's putting a zero down, they're not happy. So I think I'll go along with the motion, but you know, I think our message to you is let's see if we can't make those things improve over the next 6 months.
Ms. Weber?
I don't know if you'd accept a friendly amendment, but I think that the merit or the salary range should include the 7%. I mean, 3%, sorry, the $7,000 is what I was thinking. And then the incentive being like $15,000. But I think he should be entitled to that 3% that everyone else got. But that's just my opinion, and I don't know if anyone would accept a friendly amendment on that.
Is that a proposed amendment to the motion? Well, if there's no seconds, it will fail. Is there a second to the motion to amend? That motion fails. So back on the original motion, which would award a $20,000 incentive to our CEO. Any further discussion?
Is that in line with the dollar amount for the percentages that we all?
It's pretty close. I mean, they were
It's
22.5,
about
right? I'm just rounding it.
4,750 off of what the calculated average would have been.
Say it was 22 something.
That's
22.5.
correct. So if the percentage was 50.9%, that equates to $24,750.
And I was just rounding it to 50 and doing 20.
So, on the motion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. Let's have a show of hands. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? 2. Okay, so 9 and 2. Ms. Adra?
I would qualify that, again, I would go for an incentive. I think 2 is unreasonable at this time, given that we have the evaluation coming up in September, and it's been clear that there are areas that we need to address. I would be much more comfortable being reflective in the September timeframe of those improvements versus the current with the conditions of an average score right now.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Dwight, Mr. Dorch is being excused. Ms.
Chris, we focused on, this sort of evaluation always sort of focuses on the negative a little bit. I just wanted to thank you for the time you put into things. I think some of the things you've done this year have just been great. We've done between the sales efforts and the sponsorships that we've done. I think, you really are getting to that tipping point that you talk about, and I appreciate your efforts, and we look forward to hopefully many years to come. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I've heard the board loud and clear. I realize there are areas that need to improve. And I guess I'm a victim of an approach I've taken in the past, and that is address the sucking chest wounds first and then worry about the broken legs later. And I think we've really closed up all the sucking chest wounds and are now at a point where I can focus more on what I need to do better, which is communicate with this board, keep everyone in the loop so they feel that they know what we're up to, and better understand these issues, which are so complex and often can't be fully explored during the board process or even the committee process. So thank you for your vote of confidence. Thank you for your feedback. I take it very seriously, and I will do better in those areas you've pointed out.
Thank you to the board as well. I would encourage you to bring any further thoughts that you have to the retreat on Monday. I think that would be a good time to talk about that. Item Q will be the legislative update. Mr. Higgins or Mr. Scolari, who wants to do this?
Sean's here for questions. I'll run. We already talked in length about the film incentive bills. Sean was here to answer those questions, but I'm going to run through some of the pieces of legislation that we're looking at for the RSCVA. You have a printout in front of you of a report, and I'll just go through some of the highlights. If there's specific questions, let me know. AB4 is that bill I reported last time on the public notice issue. It's still in committee. I think the Press Association is working on that with the bill sponsors. It would allow us to do our legal notices on our website as long as we let the public know that they're on our website, and that would entail us putting in an ad in the paper that our legal notices be on there. We don't have a lot of them, but they do come up time to time. AB 19 has moved out of committee. That was the consolidation of those committees. There was an advisory committee on the fairgrounds property, and they consolidated that into the junior livestock committee. There was an amendment presented to put a Reno rodeo representative on that because they had concerns that they wanted a voice on that. Just so everyone knows, we have a management contract that has another 30 years on it with the county. The county leases that land under a 99-year lease with the state, but we manage that property. So that committee will have a voice on the property as it relates to 4-H and livestock activities, because in the statute that set up the use of that property when it was turned over to the county, that property has to promote agricultural uses. So the 4-H and livestock people want to have more activities of that, and I know Joe and Brian have been working with the agricultural department to make sure we have a nice relationship and work together on that piece of property. AB 31 is the public records bill put forward by the Attorney General, and what it essentially does when your legal counsel goes through a request for a public record, there's been a balancing test in the case law that says if the public's interest outweighs the privacy interest, then you need to release that record. This bill tries to codify that balancing test in statute, so I'm obviously taking an interest in that and how I advise this organization on public records requests. AB 65 is the open meeting law bill we discussed before. It has some good things in it. It would allow fact-finding meetings without having a formal meeting. It also puts all the exemptions to the open meeting law in one section, which is helpful from a statutory interpretation standpoint. The thing that lawyers who advise legal bodies like this, one of the hiccups on that bill is they want to define deliberate and what that means. The original definition of deliberate was a little open-ended, and there was some concern about if you all were at a social event and you talked about an issue, would that be a deliberation and we'd be violating the open meeting law? So they're looking at that issue at the Attorney General's office. Is there a question? Sure.
I did have a question, if it's okay. I don't know if I can just jump in here.
Sure. Interrupt me anytime.
On AB 56, the open meeting law, I think you just were talking about.
65?
Oh, it's 65.
Correct,
Okay, transpose the numbers there. At our board meeting on Tuesday, I think we've had questions about the open meeting law, thinking that this wasn't going to be a good thing the
And I
open
think
meeting law is
that's the
proposed.
concern on this deliberation question. And I've
Okay.
raised the concern along with your legal counsel and some other local government lobbyists. So
Okay.
how that gets worked out, but I have relayed my concern because I think it would be an open-ended thing for this board if you were meeting socially. So yeah, there's concerns on the bill. The Attorney General really wants to move a bill, so that we'll probably see some amendments in a work session. So I'll report back next month on where that issue goes.
Okay.
If that helps.
I just didn't want it to sound like everybody's okay with it, because I don't know that we all
No, that
are.
wasn't my intent. I
Okay.
think there's good pieces to it, but then there's a lot of problems with it that folks have pointed out, including me, so.
Along with AB 65, the problems that we've faced relative to hiring a
I
CEO,
was just gonna get into that.
are those going to be addressed? And is
We,
this
uh,
process of this discussion going to be addressed?
We looked at AB 65 as an opportunity for that. We met with the chairman, and I've talked to the chairman on the other side and Senate too. There's a real reluctance to have any new exemptions opened up in this bill to allow us to close our meetings to recruit our CEO, for instance. Sean and I are still looking for opportunities. There's not many opportunities, but we're going to look for them. The other thing that's been expressed to me when I have raised these issues is the Attorney General's office has extended the olive branch to me to work on our issues in the interim and actually carry a bill next session for the RSCVA to take care of those issues, which I think would be a great thing if we don't get something accomplished this session, because then you can really dig deep into the issue. The problem we're facing is once somebody asks for a special exemption like that, you got to open up to everybody, and I don't know if the legislators really want to go there right now.
That's,
So-
I think, Brett, that's the most important point. We've talked to not just the committee chairman, but the members, and really the issue is they all understand our issue, and most of them are sympathetic, but if they give us the exemption, there's 10 people standing behind us who want something as well, and the committee chairwoman basically said, look, I can't open it up for anyone right now. And so we met twice with the Attorney General, and they're willing to work with us, unfortunately, probably not this session, on this, but in next session and work
And
with
let me
it.
clarify, it's the Attorney General's staff, the folks who have dealt with the open meeting law the last 8 years. It's George Taylor, and there's a couple others in there that they would actually put aside a bill draft for us next session to work on those issues. I think actually at one point they were going to do it based on the feedback they were getting from us and the county, but this session they didn't want to carry that water for the locals, because I think a lot of the local governments agree with the issue. We need to be able to have some flexibility when we hire people and when we deal with our personnel issues. It's just they want to have a frank and open discussion and bring the issue next session. Not to say Sean and I are still going to look for opportunities, but it's going to be a tough task, just given the climate down there, if that helps. Another interesting one is that I watched yesterday is AB 318, and this is being pushed by the Republican caucus, and what they want to do is raise the threshold. Right now, any public works jobs over $100,000, you have to pay prevailing wage. AB 318 would raise that limit to 1.5 million. Obviously, it could save folks money. There was studies presented yesterday on every side of the issue. I wouldn't expect this bill to go very far because it is a Republican, but we're watching it, obviously. It could help us. Maybe you see a study on this as well, because the prevailing wage threshold hasn't been looked at in, I think, almost 30 years. So there's, at least from that perspective, need to look at it. It could save local governments some money. There's evidence to say it wouldn't save them money. You know, the unions were out in force yesterday, put it that way, on this issue. Another interesting one that I'm having staff look at is AB 342. That's another Republican caucus initiative to put new government employee hires into kind of a new system for PERS and benefits. So I sent it off to Charlotte and folks if we need to just be aware that that's happening. I'm not sure if that's going to go anywhere either. It's, again, another Republican issue. And the way the State Employees Association and others get on those bills. It's going to be a very difficult task to get something like that through, but obviously we'll watch it just from this organization's perspective. Oh. In AB 443, this is another kind of, they want to define what a gift is to a public officer. So we need to be mindful of that. We are subject to those ethics laws here, so they're just codifying a definition of gift that I'm watching just for this board's perspective. AB 445, which was interesting to me, the state boards and regulatory agencies, I guess some of them aren't posting their agendas like we all do, so I thought that was interesting that now they have to tell them to do that, which was interesting to me. There's one other, AB 286, I apologize it's not on your list, but I had it down, I don't know how it didn't get in our system, and this is one I think I talked to Jennifer about and I want staff's input on, and anyone around this table. It's AB 286. What it's going to do is require for events, special events over 2,500 patrons, you have to have a dedicated emergency medical services booth and a dedicated ambulance and some other requirements. So I asked Jennifer, I'm going to get it to her and have staff kind of give me some feedback. I don't know if Sharon, has the city looked at that one for special events, any part of it? And I also have a call into the RSCVA folks to see if they're going to be doing anything on the bill. Could have an effect on those folks that promote our special events. I don't know if it'll scare them away, but maybe there's some things we can work on to get some of the concerns alleviated. I don't want to go up and flatly oppose a bill like that for obvious reasons, but I think it could have an effect on how our special events run. And I think this is one of those bills from Las Vegas Assemblyperson Flores. They had some issues at the Daisy Carnival that this relates to down south. That has about 75,000 people at it, Sean, I think, including
100.
you.
Brett, did that make a distinction whether it's an indoor or an outdoor event?
It was there's no distinction on that. It's just the threshold on how many people attend it.
Aren't there, I mean, obviously run pretty large special events, and there are already kind of regulations when you work with the cities and with the county. Why does this need to be would be my question.
That's
Why
the
does this
exact
need to
question
be?
I raised when I first
Yeah, that's
saw
the
this.
first thing. And secondly, please, no more regulation. I mean, this is just, the costs for these events are just getting out of control, and what's costing them events the most are these regulations of city services and things like that. It's going to choke it.
So if there's a position this board wants to take on that, we'll take that today, or if you would rather us kind of wait and see, we could do that as well and kind of get into the details of the bill.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
Is this the bill that is also kind of incorporated into the so-called Burning Man bill? Because it's about special events as well. But I think the reason why they're doing this is probably for statewide, because we do all work together. We all have the appropriate agencies involved, as you're saying, Beth, but not statewide. And so I don't know if it's events over 2,500 or if it's all counties or, counties under a certain population or whatever, because we already do it. And I'm sure Clark County probably already does it as well. But the rest.
Think about 2,500 people. I mean, does that mean conventions need to have an ambulance? I mean, seriously. So I think it could be, we really need to kind of keep an eye on that.
Yeah,
It could be
and I don't see where special event is even
defined.
defined in the bill. Maybe, like I said, we're still kind of getting into the details, and I want to
Okay.
talk to the LVCVA and probably the gaming guys and see what
Yeah.
folks
I
are
mean, I
doing
don't want to
on
make
this
too big
bill.
of a deal of it, but at the same time, that could get very expensive very fast for these guys. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the concern I had when it first popped up on my radar, was these smaller special events. They're operating on a real tight budget. We don't want to discourage them from hosting their event here, so. Just a couple others. The film incentive we talked about. And then SB 171, I think, is something that the RSCVA will probably want to support. Senator Debbie Smith and others have put this bill in as kind of their jobs creation. What it does is it would do a one-time $325 million bond issue at the state, and every local government, cities and even local governments like us can make requests up to 70% of the project costs out of that. Washoe County, I think in the bill, is allocated about 49 million of that, 325 million. 200 and something million goes to Clark County. Just, it's all based on the population split. But it could be an opportunity for this board to make a request for a project that it has, whether it's capital or something. It has to be a capital expenditure, maintain a capital expenditure. One of those, maintain our facilities, has to be that type of project. But we can put in a request to the treasurer's office, just like any other local government. So Debbie Smith asked me to get your support on this bill, and I said I would bring it up at this meeting.
How much for Washoe County did you say that would be?
I'm sorry, I don't have it in front. It was 49 million and change.
Okay.
I'll send the bill out to everyone. I think it's a good bill. Kind of lets you guys leverage the state's bonding capacity, local governments,
Local
RSCVAs
governments.
and others. Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that, not just for Washoe County, but for Reno and Sparks.
Absolutely.
In Washoe
It's
County.
any local government.
Thanks.
Excuse me, do you want an action by the board today?
Sure, we can have an action right now or after I finish my report, or
Why don't you
whatever the
finish your
pleasure of the board.
Okay.
SB 509 is a Sparks room tax bill. Let me give you a little history what happened. In 2003, Sparks had an effort to raise their rate in the city of Sparks on hotels up to the 13.5%. That was the rate that we had in Reno and Washoe County, to specifically earmark those 2.5% funds for the Victorian Square. Because of a funky provision in that statute that was passed, the rate went down as soon as Sparks paid off certain bonds. So there's a bill now to revive that 2.5%, and Sparks has asked us to support that effort. As we look for money for this organization, we did float the idea of sharing that money. Sparks wasn't warm and fuzzy on that, to say the least, but so we met with Sparks, met with the Nugget folks. Beth was there. She can certainly add anything if I'm missing anything, but they have asked us to support that effort. So I have that out there for action as well. And then the last one is SGR 9, which is interesting. This I looked at yesterday. I guess there's been issues with, and this might relate to Burning Man and others, with BLM dragging their feet on permitting special events. So I thought that was interesting for us to just take a look at it. A lot of our events, or a lot of events happen on BLM land, and it's something that's moving really quickly through, and I thought it was something that we should watch and obviously support, because you never know what new type of Burning Man event's going to pop up, and we don't want the BLM dragging their feet when we're trying to get something approved.
You know, Bonnie brought up the Burning Man bill. Have you guys been kind of watching that? Because I'm a little, I mean, there's some additional taxation that's going after it. I'm a little concerned, those of us who manage the larger special events, is that going to affect us in any way? Should we be watching that?
We are, but it's specifically on that bill, were some abuses by the county government out there and charging, and so they're trying to rectify that. Really, that stemmed from the amount of money the organizer being charged by the county for services, and that really was the issue for the Burning Man bill. It was, you know, they started out, they were charged $50,000. Within 5 years, they were at $500,000. You know, so that was really the issue on that bill, is only allowing the county to charge for services, you know, plus a reasonable fee, not just whatever they wanted, because what they were doing was charging for everything they could think that could possibly have been affected by Burning Man.
And that concludes my...
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yeah, I think this is a good time for me to say this, but, you know, for 6 legislative sessions, I've been on the City Council, Sparks, and other organizations that signs an MOU every legislative session between the entities that says, among other things, if there's any kind of legislation put forth by some organization that's going to affect another, that you let them know ahead of time. Okay, this organization, I just wanted to say, blew that MOU, but don't feel bad because the school district did it in the first 4 days. So I just want to remind people that if we're going to sign an MOU, let's follow the MOU. If we're not going to follow it, then let's just not do it. Luckily, I guess, for me, I don't have to vote for it ever again because I'm termed out and I won't be here for the next legislative session. So it may be a bonus for me.
Any other questions for Mr. Scolari or Mr. Higgins? Okay, which items did you want us to take action on? SB 171?
SB 171 and then SB 509.
Okay. SB 171 provides for a program of matching grants to local governments for the maintenance and repair of public works. Would someone care to make a motion or ask?
And what about the other one that you brought up that Beth commented on regarding the ambulance service and the medical services? Is that, it's not on your list, I don't think.
I don't have a recommendation to support or oppose it yet. I was going to try to do a little bit more fact-finding and then bring that back later. I wouldn't want to have some sort of opposition, the only one out there. But if the board wants to move to an opposition or a neutral right now, then I can get more information back next month.
Personally, I support what Beth said. I think she's absolutely correct, and I think we as an organization have to recognize that. And so I think if we take any action, it should be to support an opposition to additional regulation relative to imposing additional protection services beyond what already exists from the state level. So I don't know
and if that's the direction today, that's perfectly okay with us. We can go with that direction.
Which item is it?
That is AB 286. Sorry, it's not on your list. So, but
I need a motion to support SB 509 and not support AB 286.
You can do it all in one motion, or you can take each bill by one. It's AB 286, that's the medical services. SB 171, I'm recommending support, and SB 509, that was the Sparks, Sparks and Nugget has asked us to support that.
Okay.
You know, just a comment, can you do that individually? Because I'm not sure we need to oppose something to what, you know, like you said, we don't know where it's going. And we ran into problems yesterday when we decided to oppose a bill, and it really upset one of the assemblymen who threatened us, so I don't want to do that again.
You know, at this time, Mr. Kerrigan, I would agree with you on that bill. Also because, you know, obviously as Brett goes through these and he and I talk about them, a lot of these bills, although we're telling you about them, won't come off this piece of paper. Now, the two we're asking for support, obviously, we think both of those have a good chance. Obviously, on the Sparks bill, it will be important for Brett and I to work that actively to help get that support because there will be some questions there.
Would you consider doing them separately?
You can do one and then.
You know, I don't think I'm going to. I think I would say that we would wait on 286. I don't think I'm going to put that part of my motion. But I would like to see us support 509. Or is that appropriate?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I'd like to do, can I put 171 and 509 together? You okay with that? Okay. So I'd like to make a motion for the RSCVA to support SB 171 and SB 509.
Second? Somebody second? Okay. Mr. Curtis, under discussion.
Could I just have a little bit of better understanding about the 509 one? What's that all about? Can somebody fill me in a little bit more on that?
You want to take it?
How much time have you got? Okay.
Yeah, no, real quick. And when I was the chairman of redevelopment, we went to, Sparks was 2.5% behind everybody else on room tax. We went to the legislature and asked for that 2.5%. In other words, that everybody that pays room tax in Sparks would raise their room tax 2.5%, and that 2.5% would come back to Sparks to buy land and to do different things on Victorian Square. When that bill came out of committee, nobody noticed it, including every lobbyist that we have and everybody else, that there was a provision in there that said once you pay off your bonds, then it goes back to zero. Nobody noticed that. Sparks paid off their bonds about 5 years ago, okay, because we were trying to be efficient. If we would have known that provision was in there, we'd have kept bonding for $50,000 just to keep it going. And so what we're doing now is asking Senator Smith to just strike that line out and reinstate it. And that's where it stands. And the RSCVA wanted part of that money for the Livestock Event Center. And so we butted heads on that a little while, and the RSCVA backed off and said, okay, go for it. And that's what we're asking for now, is support from the RSCVA so that Sparks can go back and just put it back in law that's been there for since 03. Thanks.
And I think to add to that, this was really supported by the NUGA. Michonne and Stephen went out and met with every single motel owner in order to get this on. So it's kind of a self-imposed tax as far as we were concerned. But the reason we did it, obviously for Victorian Square, but it's about tourism. And we're trying to drive, get improvements down there that are going to drive tourism to the region. So I think, as far as supporting the mission of the RSCVA, it's spot on.
Yeah, and let me just say, when I was chairman, the chairman and vice chairman, we went and talked to every single payer of the room tax and we had 100% on board with that for everybody in Sparks.
So in this interim 5 years, you've been paying into the redevelopment agency? So
Yes.
So it's not going to go back up to 13.5. It's been at 13.5.
It's been at 13.5, and as of April 1st, because when this was all caught, we're now collecting 11%, and now we're asking for it to go back to 13.5. So just be a couple of months. Yeah.
And just to clarify, those bonds were
really
paid off
fun.
in 09.
What's that?
Those bonds were paid off in 09. So it's been
What did I say, 05?
Three and
Yeah,
change.
09.
Been 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, on the motion. This would endorse, the RSCVA would endorse SB 171 and SB 509. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, that passes. We'll move on to, and thank you, Mr. Higgins, for
Thank
being
you
here.
very much.
Thank you, Brett, for the fine report. We'll move on to item 9, items for future board meetings. Are there any items that you'd like to hear future board meeting? Mr. Finland?
We talked earlier about airlift, and that always continues to come up. Would it make sense to have somebody from the airport come and talk to us about the efforts to increase, decrease, or tell us about the processes over there?
We hear a lot of input, get a lot of input about airlift, and the paradigm has shifted and changed, and I think it would be good for somebody to come and talk to the RSCVA, and I'll make sure that happens.
I think Brian Pratt has done a number of presentations to various groups, and it's very informative in the overview. And also the reality is the airline industry now has changed quite a bit from back in the good old days when friendships and loyalty and other factors actually had a lot of merit. Today, it's all about ROI. And that being said, there's some exciting new developments, too, that this will be very timely to share with this board.
Yep. Okay. Board member comments. Any further comments from the board? Bonnie?
I'm sorry I wasn't at the facilities meeting last month, or this month, or whenever it was.
That was actually canceled.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. But in the meantime, I've had a couple of different phone calls from folks saying that and I think I've shared this with you by email, but I don't know where we've gone on it, so that's why I'm bringing it up to the board. Where are we going with the Livestock Event Center that the folks that are involved with the snaffle bit futurity are having a problem and may not commit to staying with Reno in the probably next year. And if we are doing anything to encourage and bring them in, and if it's painting a building or doing something, what can we do to make sure that we keep that event here?
They have provided a very specific list of things they want to see improved, and this is a very key part of our discussion on capital, because as we put together the 13-14 budget, we have very limited funds available for capital, and yet the number one priority is to keep existing customers right now. So we know what they need us to do. As part of our retreat on Monday, one of the groups that'll be getting together and talking will be talking about what we can do on the capital front, ideas, and asking specific board members to kind of take ownership with us of trying to find solutions for that. Because a lot of these are hypotheticals. If the boiler blows up at the convention center, what are we going to do? Well, thank heavens it hasn't happened, and it may not happen for a while. But a group saying, we've come with you for years, and now we want to pull out, because you haven't done these things, that's an immediate need that we need to address. So we are very much aware of it. We know what they need. We need to find a way to fund it, and we're going to ask the board's support going forward to help us find a solution for that, and the broader picture as well.
Well, I also need to share at a recent National Association of Counties conference in D.C. at the beginning of March. I was in attendance there and ran into two different people that actually do attend the snaffle bit and said the same thing, that they really wanted to keep it in Reno, but so we need to pay attention to that. And if you're going to be talking about that on Monday, I just wanted to make sure, because I won't be at the retreat on Monday. I'm in a budget meeting with the commission.
It'll be discussed Monday, but it's obviously a very serious issue for this organization, one that we talk about constantly, and we just want to expand the circle and have some board ownership too as we try to find solutions, because we've approached CEOs and have taken a couple of different sort of trial approaches and haven't really found traction for solutions. So we need to tap into your brain power and your connections and ideas, because this is a looming challenge for this organization. And, you know, our team deals with a lot of operational issues that our counterparts don't. Most destination marketing associations are sales and marketing only. We have to deal with fixing roofs and renovating women's bathrooms to keep business in our destination. So this one is really at the top of the list going forward.
Well, I would request that if I could see what some of the things are as the chairman of the facilities committee, I guess, because I was contacted by a constituent that lives in my district and was the one that was telling me that he's on the board and that they were talking about withdrawing. So I'd really like us to pay some attention to these, even if it's just conversation, if it's a phone call,
Right.
saying, you know, we're trying to work on this and what can we do, and if we need to go out and get paint, if that's what the case is.
Well, and I think there are some situations where if we do a couple things on the list, it shows we're sincere
Yes.
about responding to their concerns, even if we can afford to do it all at once. So we need to make an assessment on that. I also have been accumulating the critiques. I get every critique from every group that meets at our facilities. And I'm starting to see other groups at the Livestock Event Center giving negative feedback on the facility. They give us high marks in terms of our staff and how their event went and everything else, but they say this place needs some capital dollars. So it's not just Snaffle, it's a lot of other groups who've been very loyal to us and given us a lot of business over the years. We're saying, guys, please, we like you guys, we want to keep on coming back, but something has to change.
Well, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep going on in this, but from what I understand, and I don't know because I'm not into horses and all that, but that the snaffle bit is a very high dollar event, and that it's really one that we need to be paying attention to.
It's a very upscale clientele who attends that event, as opposed to some of our equestrian events, which are more middle America. This one is basically rich people enjoying a sport.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Chris, wasn't that $2 a night room addition that the downtown casinos put on themselves? Wasn't that supposed to be used at the Livestock Event Center too?
It can be used at the Livestock Event Center once the obligations for bowling and event center have been met.
Oh, is that how that thing, okay.
Right. So moving forward, we have a potential solution there for some of those funds because they can be allocated on livestock and event. It's just the USBEC contract we signed through 2030 has specific elements in it that we're still paying for.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comments? Motion for adjournment?
To adjourn?
Thank you. We stand adjourned.